Hello YouTube, today we're going to be talking about Great Lakes history from the age of sail to the modern era. So it is not known what the first vessel to sail on the Great Lakes was named, but we know one of the earliest ships to sail on the Great Lakes was the Lee Griffin. The ship was built in 1679 by the French explorer René Robert Caviar Sieur de la Salle. The ship was built from trees in the surrounding area, and also carried 5 cannons on deck, which 2 of them were made of brass. The ship later sunk in a gale on Lake Michigan. For the next 50 years, a few amount of vessels were built for the Great Lakes. The next documented vessel on the Great Lakes was built in 1734 by a French sailor. In 1763, the French lost control of the Great Lakes, and Great Britain gained control. From 1764 to 1815, nearly every vessel on the Great Lakes was built for the British Royal Navy. Between this time, fur traders would sometimes pay these British ships to transport their furs, but it became extremely unreliable when the American Revolution occurred. During the Revolution, Canadian fur traders feared that they would be attacked by the American soldiers or that they would capture their vessels. Because of this, fur traders had to rely on canoes to transport their goods. But as these fur traders moved further north and west, their depots grew further away from each other. Thus, the cost of transporting them grew. In 1779, small fur trading partnerships combined together to make the Northwest Company. They chose Grand Portage as their headquarters. In 1784, the Northwest Company asked the Governor-General of Canada for permission to build a ship instead of a canoe for service on the Great Lakes, since the canoe was small and fragile to the lake. The governor agreed, and the sloop vessel Beaver was built at Detroit. The vessel could now carry 95 tons instead of 4 tons, which the canoe could carry. In 1788, the British reopened the Great Lakes to commercial shipping. Eventually, fur trading began to decline in the 1820s, and by the 1840s, the fur trading era had come to an end. Between the 1830s and 1850s, grain and iron ore started to be shipped on the Great Lakes. The first cargo of grain was shipped in 1836 to Buffalo, New York, on the brig John Kenzie. The first cargo of iron ore was shipped through the Sioux Canal in 1855, also on a brig called Columbia. In the 1860s, schooners on the Great Lakes had evolved into their own look and were referred to as lake schooners. These lake schooners were normally larger than the ocean-going schooners, and they were more maneuverable, they sailed better against the wind, and they could operate with smaller crew sizes. 3-masted schooners were a popular choice in the Great Lakes because they allowed for a greater number of sails, which means that they could be smaller in size and they were easier to trim. In the 1830s, a new type of schooner was developed. This schooner could sail on both the Great Lakes and the Erie and Welland canals without having to stop and transfer its cargo onto another vessel. The scow schooners had flat bottoms, straight sides, and square ends that enabled them to navigate narrow and shallow canals and also locks. A centerboard was added to these vessels to increase stability in open water. When the 1880s came around, steamships had become the popular choice on the Great Lakes, and sailing vessels were no longer being constructed. So, shipping companies, in order to keep their sailing vessels in service, had to reduce operating costs or find alternative uses for these old vessels. So, one of the most popular choices was to remove one of the masts on these sailing vessels to make room for more cargo. Another last effort was to use them as tow barges for steamships. So, the steam age had begun, and the sailing era was finished. Great Lakes history flipped its page. So that concludes Part 1 of the history of the Great Lakes vessel. Part 2 will be coming out soon. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a like, and if you haven't already, subscribe to my channel. We are getting so close to 200 subscribers. And yeah, that's pretty much it.